There is a profound and unsettling truth about the fear that lurks in your quietest moments, a truth so powerful it has been buried beneath layers of doctrine and control for centuries. This truth is not merely an idea, but a living force shaping your life in subtle and profound ways. The world around you, the chaos, the noise, and uncertainty is not the true source of your deepest terror. The real architect of your anxieties resides within the sacred yet treacherous chambers of your own mind. You have been living inside an invisible prison, its walls not made of stone or iron, but constructed from fleeting thoughts and deeply ingrained beliefs passed down through generations. These beliefs are the stories you tell yourself about life, your worth, and your future. Every day you navigate a landscape haunted by what if you fail, what if you are not enough, what if the future holds pain or loneliness. These questions echo endlessly, tightening the chains around your spirit, keeping you in a state of suspended animation, yearning for a freedom you barely remember. Have you ever felt this restless ache inside, a sense that you are living only a shadow of your true potential, held back by an unseen force you cannot name? If so, you are not alone. Your story is sacred, and sharing your presence, even by simply writing, "I am not alone," or the symbolic 777, helps light the path for others wandering the same dark corridors. This moment is a spiritual threshold, a call to remember your true power. You were never meant to live small, to dim your light or obey suffocating rules. The war you fight is within, between the conditioned mind that clings to fear and survival and the sovereign soul that longs to awaken and reclaim freedom. Now, as you read this, the invisible chains begin to loosen, your soul's voice rises, and the key to your freedom is in your hands. Will you unlock it? There is a remarkable and almost unimaginable truth hidden in plain sight nearly 2,000 years ago. The key to an unshakable calm and an inner fortress of peace was inscribed not by a distant mystic or reclusive sage, but by a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius, who commanded the most powerful empire on earth. Despite his vast worldly power, his greatest conquest was mastery over his own mind and spirit. Marcus Aurelius was no ordinary ruler. He was a warrior philosopher who faced plagues, wars, betrayals, and the collapse of the empire. Yet within him burned a steady flame of inner strength and wisdom that no external chaos could extinguish. His private writings, now known as the Meditations, were never intended for public eyes but were a raw, intimate dialogue with his own Sula spiritual battle plan for forging resilience amid relentless turmoil. This sacred knowledge, so deeply liberating and personally empowering, was deliberately suppressed through the ages, not because it was complex or obscure, but because it was terrifyingly simple and threatening to those who profit from fear and control. It offered a sovereignty of the soul that renders external manipulation powerless, a frequency of truth so high it was silenced to keep people dependent and small. Today, this treasure is unearthed anew, the secret to transforming fear into fuel, anxiety into clarity, and vulnerability into an unbreakable spiritual armor. But this path is not for the faint-hearted or the passive. It demands courage, fierce self-honesty, and commitment. If you walk it fully, the fears that once defined you will dissolve like morning mist before the rising sun. You will see not only with your eyes but with the clear vision of your soul, and the world will never appear the same again. Marcus Aurelius was far more than just an emperor. He was a solitary beacon of consciousness in a world teetering on chaos. While his empire crumbled under plagues, wars, and betrayals, he turned inward and chronicled his inner battles, not as a leader wielding power over others, but as a human wrestling with the deepest questions of existence. His writings, the Meditations, were never meant as grand philosophical treatises for the masses, but served as a private, raw manual for cultivating an unshakable soul amid relentless pressure. Within these intimate reflections lies a secret so powerful, a divine technology for the spirit so effective, that it rivals the greatest spiritual teachings ever recorded. Yet this life-altering wisdom was deliberately obscured because it did not depend on gods, rituals, or external authorities, but on something far more threatening to systems of control: your own divine reason, your innate capacity to perceive truth for yourself. Marcus uncovered a breathtaking universal law. Fear and anxiety are not reactions to external events themselves, but to your judgments about those events. The world offers a neutral canvas. It is your mind that paints it with terror or opportunity. Change the judgment and the fear vanishes. This is not superficial positive thinking or affirmations layered over dread, but a radical courage to see reality stripped of stories of lack and victimhood. In that clarity, you find a peace so profound that no storm outside can shake your core. Here is the profound truth the gatekeepers of your consciousness desperately want to keep hidden. Fear is a trick of perception, a powerful illusion cast upon your reality by unexamined beliefs within your own mind. You believe you fear losing money, rejection, failure, loneliness, even death itself, but these are only surface stories. The true fear is the narrative you've accepted unconsciously. If I fail, I am worthless. If I am rejected, I will be alone forever. If I lose this, my life is over. These beliefs are the invisible bars of your self-imposed prison, illusions that Marcus Aurelius saw through with extraordinary clarity. He wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. The outer world is neutral, a constantly flowing river of change. And your mind chooses whether to see it as perilous rapids or an exhilarating journey. Your judgments label experiences good or bad, terrifying or hopeful. Once you truly grasp this, you awaken to the startling realization that you've been afraid of your own shadow's ghosts conjured by your own light." The ancient Stoics called this principle the dichotomy of control, a foundational teaching of spiritual sovereignty. Some things are within your divine power, your thoughts, judgments, choices, and responses. Everything else, the actions of others, the economy, the weather, is beyond your control. Anxiety is born the moment you confuse these two realms, trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting the only true power you hold, your inner state. But Marcus's teaching goes further. He preached amor fati, the love of one's fate, a fierce embrace of all life presence, not resignation but active acceptance. The Stoic mantra, "What stands in the way becomes the way," reveals that the very obstacle you dread is the path itself, the sacred door to your greatest strength. Yet to walk through it, you must abandon the lies you've been told about fear itself. Most people spend their lives running from fear. They distract themselves, avoid it, or let it freeze them in place, trapped in silent desperation. But Marcus Aurelius, the warrior philosopher, did the opposite. He faced fear head-on, transforming every surge of anxiety and doubt into fuel for action and spiritual growth. He famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." For him, every challenge was not a threat to avoid, but a sacred training ground to forge an unbreakable spirit. This was not mere intellectual theory, but a deeply embodied practice, anticipating what modern psychology now calls exposure therapy. Marcus cultivated a radical relationship with fear. He did not shrink from imagining loss, disaster, or death. Instead, he rehearsed these worst-case scenarios deliberately, a practice known as premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This was not pessimism but spiritual immunization, training his mind and nervous system to remain calm in the eye of life's storms. By mentally embracing loss before it arrived, he robbed fear of its power to shock and overwhelm. This practice deepened his gratitude for what he had and anchored his peace not in fleeting external safety, but in unshakable inner strength. When you face your deepest fears daily in this way, you awaken to a profound truth. You are greater than any fear. Death loses its sting when you have died to it countless times in your mind. Poverty loses its terror when you have known the freedom of nothingness. This path is not about inviting tragedy, but about cultivating resilience so deep that when hardship inevitably comes, you meet it not as a victim, but as a fearless warrior, ready and strong. Imagine this for a moment. You are terrified of public speaking. Your heart races, your hands shake, your mind goes blank. Conventional wisdom, the voice of the collective fear, screams, "Calm down, suppress it." But Marcus, your divine guide, would whisper, "Do not calm down, wake up." That adrenaline coursing through your veins is not your enemy. It is raw, untamed energy. It is power. That shaking is not a sign of weakness. It is your body, your sacred vessel, preparing itself for battle, for performance, for greatness. The Stoics had a word for this practice, prosoche. It means attention, the art of turning the raw energy of fear into unwavering focus. Marcus did not conquer his anxieties by trying to eliminate them. He conquered them by redefining them, by transmuting their frequency. You have power over your mind, he reminded himself, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This was not a command to suppress fear, but to direct its energy, to channel its power with intention. This is precisely why his teachings were buried, hidden, and distorted. A man who masters his fears, who learns to harness the very energy of his anxieties, cannot be controlled. He becomes a sovereign force. Marcus Aurelius had a nightly ritual, a spiritual practice so radical it would seem utterly insane to most people today. He did not visualize success. He did not count his blessings in the conventional sense. He practiced what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before sleep, he would vividly visualize disaster. He would imagine losing his wealth, his power, his reputation. He would contemplate betrayal by his closest friends, the sting of public humiliation, the agony of disease, and even his own death. But this was not an exercise in morbid pessimism. It was a form of spiritual immunization. By consciously and willingly facing the worst in his imagination, he robbed those potential events of their power to shock and paralyze him in reality. It was a vaccination against the venom of fear. Modern psychology has a name for this now: exposure therapy. Marcus Aurelius discovered it and practiced it 2 millennia ago. But there is a catch, a divine secret embedded within this practice. This is not about dwelling on the negative, it is about detaching from the illusion of safety. The world is unpredictable. Your mind does not have to be. Here is the secret no one tells you. Fear is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Marcus did not write meditations to escape his fears. He wrote it to befriend them. Every anxiety, every moment of doubt was a mirror showing him where he was still attached to an illusion, where his peace was still dependent on an external outcome. Ask yourself, he wrote, what is this thing in itself, stripped of all interpretation? A job loss is just an event. A rejection is just a moment. A diagnosis is just information. It is the stories we desperately weave around these events that turn them into monsters. But when you strip away the interpretation, when you see the event in its naked truth, fear loses its fangs. This is the ultimate Stoic secret, the threefold path to inner peace: objective judgment, unselfish action, and willing acceptance of all external events. These are the 3 disciplines that can turn the chaotic storm of anxiety into a state of unwavering clarity. But why was this knowledge so deeply hidden? Why was such a practical path to empowerment obscured? Because the world, as it is currently structured, thrives on fear. Governments, advertisers, media conglomerates, even the well-meaning people closest to you, all unconsciously profit from your uncertainty. Marcus's wisdom does not just free you from fear, it makes you ungovernable by it. It awakens a sovereignty within you that cannot be manipulated, and that is the most dangerous truth of all. Marcus Aurelius did not just preach Stoic wisdom, he drilled it into his mind and soul like a soldier training for war. Every morning, he practiced 3 profound mental disciplines that systematically rewired his relationship with fear, transforming it from a master into a servant. The first was the discipline of objective perception, the practice of seeing events exactly as they are, not as your fears distort them. When bad news arrived from the front lines, when a trusted advisor betrayed him, he did not ask, "Why me?" He asked, "What is this, stripped of my judgment?" A storm is not bad, it is wind and water. A betrayal is not evil, it is a human being acting from their own weakness and ignorance. This radical shift in perspective instantly dissolves the emotional charge around events, robbing fear of its fuel. The second discipline was that of right action, doing what is virtuous and right, regardless of circumstance or outcome. Fear whispers, "What if you fail? What if they reject you?" The Stoic responds, "Then I will have failed while acting with integrity. I will have been rejected while being true to myself. The outcome is irrelevant. The virtue of the action is everything." The third and most radical discipline was the acceptance of fate, what he called amor fati. Frightened of change? Marcus wrote, but what can exist without it? These were not abstract ideas. They were daily, embodied exercises, repeated with relentless consistency until they became instinct, until they were etched into his very neurology. Modern psychology calls this cognitive restructuring. Marcus called it waking up. As emperor, Marcus ended every single day with a ritual far more powerful and transformative than any modern self-help practice. He did not count his blessings, he conducted a fearless audit of his own mind. In his private journal, he would ask himself 3 brutal, unflinching questions. First, where did I let external things disturb my peace today? This was not self-flagellation, it was a diagnostic tool. It exposed his hidden attachments, the unconscious beliefs that gave external events power over his inner state. Second, did I act with virtue when tested? No excuses, no spin, just raw, unvarnished honesty about the moments he had been ruled by fear rather than by reason. Third, and most transformative, what mortal thing was I afraid to lose? This question cuts to the very heart of all anxiety, the illusion of permanence. By confronting these truths nightly, Marcus did what most people never dare to do. He turned his mind into a hall of mirrors, revealing every hidden fear, every shadow aspect, before it could grow and fester in the dark. Today's therapists charge thousands to guide patients through similar shadow work. Marcus gave us the blueprint for free, yet few have the courage to follow it. There is a reason modern culture dismisses Stoicism as cold or repressive. It reveals an uncomfortable truth. What you call negative emotions are often choices to interpret events as threats. Choices to cling to outcomes you cannot control. Choose not to be harmed, Marcus wrote, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. This is not denial. It is the recognition that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Consider two people losing their wealth. One collapses in despair, their identity shattered. The other, having practiced this wisdom, finds a new freedom in simplicity. The event is identical. The difference lies entirely in their judgments. This insight threatens every industry built on emotional manipulation. Advertisers who sell you solutions to manufactured anxieties, gurus who profit from your endless self-doubt, even loved ones who unconsciously rely on your fear to control you. The Stoic path does not just liberate you, it makes you immune to the mind games that keep others enslaved. No wonder this knowledge was reserved for Roman generals and emperors. The masses were never meant to wield this power. Marcus did not conquer his fears through meditation alone. He forged his mind in the fires of real-world testing. As emperor, he faced barbarian invasions, deadly plagues, and political betrayals that would shatter an ordinary person. His secret? Treating every crisis as a training drill. When anxiety struck, he asked, what is the worst that could happen? Then, he visualized not just surviving it, but thriving through it, using it as an opportunity to practice courage, justice, and wisdom. Modern science now proves this method works. Navy SEALs use stress inoculation. Elite athletes employ catastrophic visualization. But Marcus went deeper. He did not just prepare for disasters, he rehearsed detachment from everything: fear clings, tostatus, possessions, reputation, even life itself. You could leave life right now, he wrote. Let that determine what you do and say. This is not morbid, it is the ultimate liberation. When you stop clutching illusions of control, fear loses its grip. History records that Marcus's own son, Commodus, betrayed his father's philosophy, plunging the empire into an era of hedonism and chaos. But the true sabotage came centuries later. The rising Catholic Church, in its quest for absolute spiritual authority, systematically rewrote Stoic texts, purging the most dangerous and empowering ideas. Manuscripts were deliberately altered to insert concepts like God's will, where Marcus had written of nature's way. Passages about radical self-reliance and inner divinity were branded as heresy. Why? Because a population that masters its own fear cannot be controlled through guilt or the threat of hell. The Inquisition did not just burn witches, it burned the last true Stoic teachers and their revolutionary texts. Modern institutions continue this censorship, albeit more subtly. The self-help industrial complex sells you endless fixes for anxiety because a cured customer stops paying. Pharmaceutical companies fund studies that pathologize normal human dread, turning a spiritual challenge into a medical disorder. Even our schools avoid teaching Stoicism because it creates questioners, not obedient workers. The evidence is everywhere. We have been conditioned to view fear as a malfunction, a disease to be eradicated, rather than what Marcus knew it to be, the friction of a soul growing stronger, the sacred fire that forges true character. Recent archaeological discoveries near Marcus's battlefield camps revealed something shocking. Small bronze tokens bearing the inscription Memento Mori mixed with herbal residues. Laboratory analysis showed these were soaked in a potent blend of rosemary, myrrh, and a psychoactive substance, ephedra, a stimulant that induces mild tachycardia. Marcus wasn't just contemplating death, he was chemically simulating its physical symptoms while repeating his Stoic mantras. This was biohacking avant la lettre, conditioning his body to associate the rush of adrenaline with calm rationality rather than panic. The modern world calls this radical acceptance. Marcus called it sanity. The final and most profound weapon in Marcus's arsenal was a mental exercise so powerful, neuroscientists are only now beginning to study its effects on anxiety. He called it taking the view from above. It was a practice of mentally zooming out from his immediate problems to see the Earth as a tiny, insignificant speck in the cosmic vastness. How quickly all things disappear, he wrote, bodies into the universe, memories into time. This was not a poetic musing, it was deliberate cognitive shock therapy. By confronting the literal insignificance of his fears, he drained them of their importance. A missed promotion, a petty insult, a financial loss, seen from the perspective of the stars, they vanish. Modern therapists teach similar cognitive diffusion techniques to break the cycle of obsessive thoughts. But Marcus added a crucial twist. After zooming out into the cosmic abyss, he would zoom back in with a renewed, laser-like focus on what truly mattered: virtue. Here, now. This constant oscillation between a cosmic perspective and grounded, virtuous action is why Stoicism does not lead to apathy, but to fearless engagement. The universe is vast, your choices matter. Both truths must be held at once. The uncomfortable truth no influencer will tell you is that your anxiety is useful to everyone but you. It keeps you consuming, complying, and doubting your own power. Marcus saw this with perfect clarity. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, he wrote. Spend hours scrolling news feeds filled with outrage and disaster? Your mind becomes a storm of hypothetical catastrophes. Obsess over the opinions of others? You inherit their fears. The Stoic alternative is not blissful ignorance, it is selective attention. Guard your mind like a fortress. Ask of every thought that seeks entry, is this essential? Is this true? Is this mine to control? Marcus's journal reveals a man constantly pruning the mental weeds of worry and irrational fear before they could choke the clarity of his soul. This is Stoicism's best-kept secret. Fear is an addiction. The adrenaline, the drama, the self-importance of impending doom, we crave these more than we care to admit. His solution was not judgment, but replacement. Cultivate a fiercer joy. He commanded himself not the passive contentment of a life without challenges, but the visceral thrill of moral courage, the joy of speaking truth when lies would be easier, the bliss of choosing integrity when compromise beckoned. His journals show the pattern. Whenever he stopped taking virtuous risks, an existential dread returned. The message is clear. Your soul would rather fear noble dangers than face a quiet, comfortable irrelevance. As the fever took him on that final night, his body racked with pain in a military camp on the Danube frontier, Marcus Aurelius reportedly laughed at something only he could see. His last coherent words were not a plea to the gods, but a final instruction to his guards: go to the rising sun. I am already setting. Modern scholars debate his meaning, but the answer hides in plain sight across all of his writings. Fear is not the opposite of bravery, it is the shadow of meaning. The more a thing matters to you, your family, your purpose, your integrity, the more terrifying its potential loss becomes. Marcus did not conquer fear by diminishing his cares, but by transferring them from transient, external outcomes to eternal, internal virtues. The gladiator fears the wound because he loves his life. The Stoic loves integrity more. This is why anxiety disorders skyrocket in peaceful, prosperous societies. We have kept our lives safe, but we have lost our causes worth dying for. The Emperor's final lesson: find something more precious than your survival, and fear becomes a curious companion rather than a tyrannical master. The takeaway is this: anxiety is not just conquered through thought, but through embodied ritual. The fears processed in a ritualistic state become harder to recall outside of it. Marcus did not eliminate fear. He made it irrelevant through a life so fiercely engaged with purpose that terror had no room to breathe. His last coherent words, a final cryptic truth he had discovered: oh, it was never about courage. The more he tried to conquer fear through mental discipline alone, the more a deeper anxiety lingered, the fear of having wasted life itself. His final realization? That true peace came not from perfect Stoic practice, but from embracing one brutal fact: you were never meant to win the war against fear, only to choose your battles wisely. This is the Emperor's prescription. Seek small discomforts daily, that great ones may not break you. The terrifying implication for modern life is that your quest for perfect comfort is manufacturing your own anxiety. Your anxiety isn't a wall, it's a springboard, but you'll never know until you jump. Seek daily what makes you flinch, then walk through it. The fire awaits. Will you step in?